On today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about how to grow a company, some of the best practices and tips, high level stuff, but nonetheless, these things are very important to analyze and take a look at with your business. So I've got a few notes here that I wanted to cover, and let's get to it. So the big idea of this talk is going to be that scaling a business really is about having a lot of little things executed well. That's why people win. So typically, we want to look for this one big idea or this one thing that's going to revolutionize our business. And in reality, every business is like an orchestra of a lot of little things done well. But there are some things that are specifically related to growth and often neglected. And those are the things I'm going to focus on in today's talk. So I wanted to give you just a few solutions on how you can improve results. So we're going to talk about awareness, speed, and people. To me, those are three of the biggest things I see on a regular basis that are affecting people's growth. On the awareness piece, that's one of the most difficult things for people right now, is even with the amount of tools that we have, is how do I get awareness, because there's way more competition in advertising than there has been traditionally. There's some studies around this, but people say that there used to be about 500 messages we would see on a regular basis. Today, that number has climbed up to anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 messages per day. And the problem that we're having is you can really only pay attention to somewhere between 125 to 150 of those. So your message may not like register with your customer, even if they see it. Even if you've put it right in front of their face, it still may escape them. Happens with junk mail all the time. We get bombarded with logos and advertisements and specials and promotions and new business opportunities. All those things come in our mailbox. We see it, but we do not see it. So question is, how are you going to get awareness with that much competition? So that's that first problem to solve. I'd say that one of the things I see probably at least on a weekly basis is that people are not intentional with their marketing. They're not really focused on getting the message in front of the right target audience. Sometimes it's because they don't know who they are. Sometimes it's because they haven't thought that part through very well. They've just sort of shotgunned their business out there, and they're hoping that it hits some sort of a target. But if you do that, you're gambling a little bit more than you are being intentional. So I would say take a few moments, figure out who your customer really is or who they've been. Try to generalize it into groupings if you can, and then use those groupings to make sure you are getting the right message in front of the right type of person in the right channel at the right time. Like, all those little things play a role in your marketing effectiveness and being able to penetrate the attention span when there's 5 or 10,000 other messages that are going to be competing for that person's attention. Very important. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about was speed. So every business has only so many resources, right? Like, you've only made so much money today or this week or this month, this year. You may only have so many reserves on hand. Your cash flow may affect some of these types of things, but whatever resources you have available, you have to really figure out where you can trim waste, because you can tie up your resources and then not create the type of velocity that you could investing in other aspects of your business. I'll give you a very simple example. So sometimes just having an overabundance of supplies on hand can be incredibly wasteful, because those things will just sit there and it's tied up capital. Like, you've spent that money, it's sitting there on a shelf, and yeah, you're going to use it at some point, but the problem is, since the money's sitting in there in the supply cabinet, you can't actually use that to buy more products or more materials, or you can't hire more help or other things that actually produce revenue. You can't do that as much because your money's tied up in this area. So you really have to look at your P&L, figure out, looking at your inventory, what's waste, what's not waste, and then be more intentional with spending money on things that actually make you money and less money on things that just sit on the shelf. You're always going to have some level of inventory. Like it's especially with obviously with the product type business, but even service-based businesses, they need to have supplies on hand. Totally get it. The problem is you need to really scrutinize those things, figure out who's doing your inventory, if they even know what good levels need to look like. Like the worst thing is running out. So sometimes people like go above and beyond trying to like pad their inventory. And in some ways it's laziness to do that, but these are the little types of things I'm talking about when it comes to like how do you execute the whole thing. Well, all these little things need to be in check so that you can have your money flowing to the places that are actually going to make you more money. I hope that makes sense. I think people that have dealt with this before get that, but it's something that's sort of on the side and we don't think about it very much, but it can certainly affect your ability to scale a business. Okay, the next part of this I would say is simplifying processes. So we all know that efficiency will allow you to get more things done in a certain time period. But sometimes we will make processes way more complicated than they need to be. Like if you want to get from here to here, typically that's a straight line. And if you are inventing steps that don't need to be there just because you feel like you need them for some reason, if they're not adding to the process, you need to figure out how to strip those out and get rid of those things. And that might not be an overnight thing. Like there may be reasons why you have those steps in there, but you have to figure out like, how do I get to where I'm trying to go faster, as fast as possible, and scrutinize those activities. If you could double your productivity or triple it or quadruple it, that'll have a massive impact on your ability to generate more income and scale your business. Instead of, the example I like to use a lot would be you go and dig up a hole and then you take the dirt you just pulled out of there and then you put it back in. Like I've seen that happen so many times where people spend all this time doing something just to undo it and you get nowhere. It's a lot of hard work. It's just not smart. So you really have to simplify processes, scrutinize them, make sure you are doing what you can to get from where you are to where you want to go as fast as humanly possible. Or use technology. It doesn't always have to be humans. People are probably the most important part, I think, of scaling a business. One of the things I like to talk about a lot is the division of labor. I think partially I like to talk about this because Adam Smith, the original famous Adam Smith that wrote Wealth of Nations, talks about this in his book, Wealth of Nations. But the division of labor is such an important thing. And you don't really understand that until you're in the position of having to switch mindsets over and over and over. And then you get to the end of your day and you're like, what did I accomplish? Versus the one person that's able to just laser and focus on this one area and crush it. So every time we change jobs or whatever, all this extra movement, that stuff needs to be pulled out and you need to try to find efficiencies and divide up who's doing what so that you can have a lot more productive time spent in each role. If you try to do everything yourself, there's no way you can do it all really well. So what happens if you're a solo entrepreneur or you're a salesperson? What does that mean? Well, since there's just you, we're not talking about assigning jobs to different people. We may be if we're talking about delegating some things out to other companies and working with them, taking advantage of their services so that you don't have to try to do that stuff yourself. That might be very productive for you. What I'm also talking about, though, is streamlining what you do on a daily basis. I've been in a lot of different roles where it would be really easy, and I've done it, to waste time on things that have zero benefit. Now, we're going to have emergencies and we're going to have conversations that happen, and some of those are unavoidable, like real world talk, right? But as much as you possibly can, you really need to look at your day, your routines, and figure out what are the most productive activities and where do I need to specialize my time in and let some other people handle some of these other issues, or just eliminate them, like one of the two. But people doing the right things, right time, and becoming specialists are certainly one of the best ways you can scale, because people can do one thing excellently. It's really hard to do a million things well. So the last part about people I wanted to talk about was just to hire talent. If you're an expert in an area and you're really good at what you do, you're just going to be able to do it and solve the problem much faster than someone else that's never even tried. It sounds like it should be obvious, right? But we live in this culture where there's some tension, because some of the things you want to be able to do it yourself, right? But if you get into this mindset of always doing every single thing yourself, you're gonna cost yourself more money than you're trying to save. I guarantee it. It's one of the fundamental premises of my business. Like, the only reason I exist is to save people time. It's not that this information that I provide isn't available someplace else. I learned it from other places, right? The problem is there's this learning curve, and there's time that has to go by, and there's these experiences that you have to understand the material. So, and that goes for any field. It doesn't really matter what the thing is. If you're a computer person, or you're talking about websites or logo design, like these are things I do that I understand. I do them every single day. Like, I understand them really, really well. But if you were to go ask me to build you a deck, I would take a while to build that deck. And as that time's cranking by, you're just missing opportunities. Does that make sense? Like, figure out how to hire talent, put those people in place, let them do what they're passionate and gifted to do, and get out of their way. Don't try to do every single thing yourself. So the objection is going to be, well, what if I don't have any other choice? Well, then start smaller. Do what you can do. Replicate yourself. Do the thing you're doing well enough to get enough extra income to hire person 2. And then you guys go work at full capacity until there's enough revenue generated to get to person 3, and et cetera. And it's like, it can take a little while, but the reality is it's going to be a much faster process, you trying to bring people on that can help you in an area, than you trying to figure out every single problem yourself. Guarantee it. So those 3 things: awareness, speed, and people, are some of the most common things that hold people back from building their company much, much faster than it needs to be. Man, I don't even know if I said what I wanted to say today. Like, those are the notes I have. I hope that I communicated them well. This is something that every single business wants to know. Like, how do I make my business better? Like, how do I grow it? How do I find more customers? How do I make sure that our business is going up instead of down on a regular basis? And I can't tell you how many times I've looked at awareness, speed, and people as some of the most common things that keep people from not producing as fast as they could. It's always those things. So hope this has helped. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me, adamsmithbranding@gmail.com, and I'll try to answer those on a case-by-case basis. Happy to help do as much as I can for you. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe to this channel, and I'm producing more and more content every day based on the questions that I get, that I run into. Also, if you want to leave questions in the comments below, feel free to do that. But until then, I hope you guys have a great day, and good luck growing your business.